Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari Chen and welcome back to my channel. Today we're continuing with the reading of Ballad of Sword and Wine, also known as Qiangging Jiu by Tang Jiu Qing. We're on volume 2 and we are picking up with, with chapters 45 through 47. So I hope you all enjoy. Chapter 45, New Blade. Waves crashed through the still waters of Zechuan's heart. Lying in the pocket of his sleeve, that handkerchief seemed to have caught fire. The flames burned right up to his ears. Zechuan knew even the hint of a flush against the snowy backdrop of his skin was eye-catching. Any denial would be unconvincing. Chr-yeh had led him right into this predicament. There was nowhere to hide. Bright mirrors seemed to surround them on all sides. He looked as if he was waiting for Zechuan to cast aside his protective shell and reveal his true colors. Zechuan licked his lips to chase away the dry heat in his throat. Curling his fingers, he ignored the provocation. He refused to give Chr-yeh a chance to pry further. "It's getting late," Zechuan declared. "Let's go get them." Chr-yeh watched him. Zechuan's unspoken, "I'm ignoring you," itched at him. It stirred up his desires to chase his momentum to victory. Haste, however, was no path to success, and impulses would only lead to pitfalls. He had to let this one go. "Our shifu have their own arrangements. There's no need to worry about them. If you want to sleep, take your time here. The east wing has been vacated." Zechuan stood at once. Jee-ANN and Zuo had shared so many rounds they would be drunk well into tomorrow. Zechuan helped Jee-ANN into the carriage to head back. Chr-yeh watched them go. When they were alone, he said to Chun-yang, "Keep a close eye on the 8th grade clans for the next few days. See who's on the move." Chun-yang nodded his acknowledgement. Carriage swaying around him, Zechuan closed his eyes to rest. They made a detour to change to their own smaller, nondescript carriage before finally arriving at the Temple of Guilt. Qiao carried Jee-ANN on his back into the courtyard. Ching-ching had been waiting half the night. When he saw them, he started forward. "It's all right," Zechuan assured him. "Shifu is just drunk." Standing under the eaves, Grandmaster Qi called, "Ching-ching, help Jee-ANN inside and let him sleep it off." Ching-ching took Jee-ANN from Qiao and carried him into the house. Freed of his burden, Qiao fell to his knees in the snow. "Has Grand Mentor been well?" "All is well upon seeing you." Grand Mentor Qi lifted a hand. "Now that you've changed your name to Qiao, that indenture is no longer of any use. Yet, for that bit of sentiment, you stayed. I should thank you." To Grand Mentor Qi, those past events were the effortless lift of a finger, but to me, it was the kindness that saved my life. All signs of frivolity had vanished from Qiao face. That year, when the Guangcheng Emperor sentenced corrupt officials to death and my father and brother were framed, if it hadn't been for the Grand Mentor's integrity and willingness to help us, all 20 members of the Qiao clan would have met an unjust death before the Meridian Gate. Your father and brother were both upright and loyal subjects. The false charges against them wouldn't have stuck. Even without me, they would have been safe and sound. Qiao paused for a long moment before he countered respectfully. The Qiao clan cannot thank Grand Mentor enough for his kindness. During the years of Yongyi, when Qiao father still served as an official in the Ministry of War, the Guangcheng Emperor dealt harshly with any whiff of corruption. The Chief Surveillance Bureau had received reports that Qiao father was in possession of properties and lands of unidentified origin. His father was helpless against the accusations until Qi Huilian had the case re-investigated and cleared the names of the senior Qiao and a few others from the Ministry of War. Afterward, Qi Huilian betrothed his daughter to the eldest son of the Qiao family. Yet this was not the end of the matter. A few years later, the Eastern Palace was itself falsely accused, and Qi Huilian was demoted from Grand Mentor to a commoner. When he retreated into the Temple of Guilt with the Crown Prince, the senior Xiao defected to the Empress Dowager. The Eastern Palace fell, and Empress Dowager Hua leveraged Pan Rugui's authority to order its remaining followers investigated in the name of the Guangcheng Emperor. Despite throwing in with the Empress Dowager's faction, Xiao Tianya's father was imprisoned again. This time, there was no Grand Mentor Qi to plead his case. Both he and his eldest son were beheaded, and the rest of the Qiao family banished to Shuotian Pass. Qi Huilian's daughter, Xiao Tianya's eldest sister-in-law, perished on the journey. Let's not talk of the past. Grand Mentor Qi tugged at his snow-white hair. It can't have been easy for you to break free of your low caste. So now, you must think this through. Once you decide to serve Lanzhou, it will be a lifelong commitment. Your life and death will no longer be your own. A gust of wind ruffled Xiao Tianya's hair, and he grinned, wide and unrestrained. Grand Mentor, I have no home to return to. In this lifetime, I've received too many favors from both you and my sister-in-law. Sinful debts I have no way of repaying. Now I can be of use. I shall dedicate my life to my master. Xiao Songyue died alongside his sister-in-law in the Tang Jiu Qing commandery. Today's Xiao Tianya is merely a blade. A blade knows not life or death, let alone freedom. These are dark times, and trouble looms like clouds shadowing our road. I urge you to wield this blade as you please. Grand Mentor Qi took a slow step out from under the eaves. One hand on the pillar for support, he looked toward Shan Zechuan. Lanzhou, this year is almost over. Xianxiang has yet to give you a gift to celebrate your coming of age. Shan Zechuan's sleeves billowed in the wind. He seemed to know what came next. Grand Mentor Qi continued. You can stand on your own now, but this road will be long. Killing your sworn enemies, dismantling the 8 great clans, overturning wrongful judgments, bringing peace to Zhongbo. None of it will be easy. Qigong means to give you a blade, and so do I. Receive it well. Fine snow fell over the courtyard. Shan Zechuan looked down and let Grand Mentor Qi lay cold fingers atop his head. Qigong didn't wake up until dinner. After some kanji, he called Shan Zechuan into the house. Do you remember the blade I mentioned last time? I hadn't forgotten it. It was delivered last night. Qigong shifted aside a shelf to reveal a saber rack. Shan Zechuan's heart stirred. He found he could no longer move his eyes away from the saber. Qigong wiped a clean cloth along the blade's edge. Chiye couldn't use it, but this blade suits you very well. I had someone reforge the sheath. Its old name is no longer appropriate. You should give it another. Shan Zechuan studied the lustrous blade with fascination. It was a straight blade that spanned almost 4 Chr. Footnote number 5, Chr is an ancient measurement of length. 1 Chr is approximately 13 inches. Unsheathing it would have to be quick work, though its width of only 2 fingers meant it would be especially maneuverable for swift attacks. The sandalwood hilt was newly constructed. It was bare of any carvings. Its only embellishment was the gold plate at the top of the hilt and a single pearl embedded in the center. It was an excellent saber, expertly forged and thoroughly tempered. Even left to gather dust for so long, its naked blade radiated a grim, imposing presence. It was as if it were immersed in a clear stream on an autumn day, pristine, untainted, and haughty, as though it knew it was without peer. Something bothered me recently, but I could only put my finger on it when I saw Xiao last night. I've been too inflexible in my teachings, and so you've become overly cautious and hesitant. Qigong laid down the cloth. With this blade, not even Xiao's wolf's fang will be a match for your draw speed. The sandalwood hilt is lighter than steel. It will allow you to be more agile. When it comes to martial arts, nothing can beat speed. This was my father's beloved blade. Nowadays, we say the G clan's martial arts should be ferocious. But those mental cultivation techniques were my father's own creation. If he could do it, so can you. You, too, can carve your own path. Grasping the hilt of the blade, Shen lifted it before him. Qingging took a few steps back. Give it a name. Shifu would give a blade of this caliber. His hands on the blade were reverent. Qingging laughed heartily. Shifu would rather use his fists. I don't like blades. It would be a waste on me. Shen thought for a moment. Then I shall call it Avalanche. That night, Grand Mentor Qi sat on his heels atop the table, writing the surnames of the 8 great clans on a piece of paper. The court officials' feast is fast approaching. The 4 great generals will be reunited, and the regional officials will return to the capital as well. Grand Mentor Qi continued as he waited for the ink to dry. With the coronation of the new emperor, there will surely be a formal review of his officials. This matter is of utmost importance and will determine political stability over the next year. Everyone will use the days around the officials' feast as an opportunity to reassess the situation in court. If the Empress Dowager wishes to stage a comeback, this is her chance. After Hua Sichan's death, the Empress Dowager was confined to the palace and hasn't shown her face since. Shen furrowed his brow. The younger members of the Hua clan have all been demoted and banished. If she intends to make a move, she will have to find external allies. But the example of Shi-Guan is fresh in everyone's mind. Who would dare side with the Empress Dowager now? Cowardly vermin will not achieve greatness. All allies are motivated by mutual benefits. As long as the Empress Dowager still holds bargaining chips, why would she worry about finding new allies? Grand Mentor Qi put down a few strokes on the paper under Hua. Moreover, the men of our clan were never dependable to begin with. You've forgotten. The one the Empress Dowager has been personally mentoring is a girl. The third lady, Shen said. Xianzeng refers to Hua Xiangyi. Given the height of her favor during the Xianda Emperor's reign, many thought Third Lady Hua would be conferred the title of Imperial Princess. Continued Grand Mentor Qi. But it didn't happen. Not because the Xianda Emperor was stingy, but because the Empress Dowager wouldn't allow it. Shen took a mouthful of tea, contemplated for a moment, then swallowed it. I understand. Then let's hear it. Shen propped an arm on his knee. If Hua Xiangyi had become a princess of Great Zhou, her marriage would be out of the Empress Dowager's hands. The marriage of a princess is a state affair, subject to the discretion of the emperor and his court officials. But if she remains Third Lady Hua, the Empress Dowager alone decides whom she will marry. Xiansheng suggests that the Empress Dowager plans to marry her off. If the mountain does not come to me, then I will go to the mountain, Grand Mentor Qi said, dipping his brush in ink. The Empress Dowager has sacrificed a pawn to save a rook. With Shi-Guan's loss, she's given up military hold of Chudu. But if Hua Xiangyi marries Xiao Chr-yeh, the loss is easily resolved. Shen tapped lightly on his teacup and lowered his lashes. This endeavor is harder than ascending to heaven. Xiao will never hand over power to someone else. I've heard Hua Xiangyi is lovely enough to bring whole cities to ruin. What is she, Helen of Troy? Sorry, Grand Mentor Qi pointed out. There's no guarantee Xiao won't change his mind once he sees her. Shen sipped his tea and kept very quiet. But indeed, it is no easy feat, Grand Mentor Qi conceded. Even if Xiao were to well and truly fall for her, Xiao Jiming won't sit idly by. Xiao and Hua are as incompatible as fire and water. There's no reason for the Xiao clan to bury the hatchet when they hold the advantage. Shen thought it over. It might be worth it to the Empress Dowager to sacrifice military power to gain more control of the central administration. But there are very few exceptional up-and-coming officials, and Hai Liangyi still heads the Grand Secretariat. The Empress Dowager can't be expected to lower Hua Xiangyi's status by making her someone's concubine. It really does seem that in all of Chudu, there was no other fitting candidate for a groom. If not in Chudu, she can look elsewhere. Grand Mentor Qi wrote the word Qi Dong. If Li Bei won't do, There's still opportunity on the other frontier. Marshal Qi and Lu Guangbai are both unmarried, Shen Zechuan agreed. In that case, it can only be Lu Guangbai. However, the Lu and Xiao clans share friendship that goes back decades. It's not the kind of relationship that can be picked apart with one move. Why have you dismissed the Qi clan? Grand Mentor Qi grumbled. There are others there besides Qi Juyin. Shen Zechuan's mouth dropped open in astonishment. It can't be. Days later, Chr-yeh accompanied Li Jianheng out of the city to welcome the two generals from Qidong. Lu Guangbai rode at Chr-yeh's side on the way back. Removing his helmet, he said, I heard some news on the way here. Do you know anything about it? Chr-yeh spurred his horse forward. What? Before Lu Guangbai could speak, Qi Juyin galloped up behind them and slapped him on the back. Marshal, Lu Guangbai yelped in pain. A rare scowl creased her brow. Resting a hand on her blade, she leaned toward Chr-yeh. When did these rumors start in Chengdu? Chr-yeh blinked back at her, increasingly baffled. Qi Juyin clenched her jaw and fumed. Someone's going to be my stepmother. Stunned, Chr-yeh blurted, Old Marshal Qi is taking a new concubine? Concubine? Huh! Qi Juyin sneered. They're saying he's going to remarry. Third Lady Hua will be my stepmother. Isn't she younger than I am? Chapter 46. Banquet. Hua Xiangyi was indeed younger than Qi Juyin by 2 years. Her recent days residing deep in the inner palace had thinned her considerably. When she saw Qi Shiyu's portrait on the Empress Dowager's desk, realization finally dawned on her. The Empress Dowager took her hand and held it for several moments before saying, It's a spring and winter marriage, but Qi Shiyu is doting. Hua Xiangyi settled her lilac palace robe and laid her head on the Empress Dowager's knee. A hand came down to stroke her long hair. No need to be sad, the Empress Dowager continued. This is how all the Hua clan's daughters marry. Marry him now, and in a few years, you will become the true mistress of Qidong and all 5 commanderies. Aunt Liu Xiang finished lighting the incense in the hall and silently motioned for the maids and eunuchs to vacate the room. I just can't bear to leave you, Auntie, Hua Xiangyi smiled. Cangjun Commandery is far away. I'll have to wait a year whenever I wish to see you again. Auntie can't bear for you to leave either. The Empress Dowager wrapped gentle arms around her. Hua Xiangyi nuzzled against her as she had when she was a little girl, listening dutifully as the Empress Dowager said, When I left Jicheng and married the Guangcheng Emperor, I was but 15. I couldn't bear parting with the swing in our manor. I loved being on it. With each rise and fall, I could feel the wind and hear the clamor beyond those high walls. My mother promised me that when I came to the imperial palace of Chengdu, if I wished, the emperor would build me one just like it. Hua Xiangyi stayed perfectly still. The Empress Dowager had been most favored by the Guangcheng Emperor, yet what he'd given was not what she wanted. The moment she'd set foot in Chengdu, she realized her husband's doting affection was as fleeting as clouds in the sky. She had been left to vie with countless women in the imperial harem for a single moment of happiness. In Chengdu, love was the most worthless thing of all. The Empress Dowager patted Hua Xiangyi's head. It's already been 37 years since I came to Chengdu. It's passed in the blink of an eye. Now my baby niece is to wed. I've truly grown old. Here, I learned that men are powerful in this world because they can take the imperial exams and rise above their station. They can wield spears and ride horses into battle. Meanwhile, we women are kept in ladies' chambers and taught virtues and precepts. No matter how talented you are, how keen your intelligence or thirst for knowledge, there will come a time when you eventually must marry. The Empress Dowager's eyes were calm. My father taught me that in this world, he and the emperor were the sky above my head. How ridiculous. Becoming empress means the empire is shared equally between the emperor and me. Who could beat the sky above my head? No one. My brothers are useless. Not one good head on all their shoulders. For generations, the Hua clan relied on marrying daughters out to keep up the appearance of an affluent clan. Yet we aren't permitted to make a single complaint. What kind of kinship is that? Well, if the world determines success purely by strength, then I, too, can emerge victorious. She stroked Hua Xiangyi's temples. Remember, it is not Qi Shi who chose you, but you who chose him. I may yet be defeated in days to come, but it certainly won't be now. My precious niece is not fleeing desperately to Qidong. You go there now to bide your time and ready yourself for action. Whatever happens in the future, you may sigh, but you mustn't wallow in resentment and self-pity. This is a game with the world at stake. Once you make a move on the board, there's no going back. Wolves surround us at every turn, but we shall fight them to the bitter end. The bamboo chimes in the hall swayed in the breeze. Hua Xiangyi squeezed the Empress Dowager's hand. I will not forget Auntie's teachings. The court officials' feast was held in Yuanchun, the first night of the year. Local officials flooded into the capital in a steady stream. All were aware Hai Liangyi was keeping close watch on them this year, and there were thus far fewer family feasts and informal banquets. Any sort of gathering could become evidence of clique forming. Li Jianheng had ascended the throne mere months ago. For many, the court officials' feast was their opportunity to observe their new master. Everyone spoke and acted with caution, unsure which way the wind was blowing in Qudu. Only the rumor of Third Lady Hua's betrothal spread like wildfire, leaving Qi Juyin with nowhere to vent her displeasure. This matter also piqued the interest of Xiao Chr-yeh, who had been looking into the 8 great clans in secret. When Xiao Jiming arrived in the capital, the brothers sat together in the manor for a leisurely chat. The Hua clan is obviously trying to rise from the ashes. No matter how much of a lecher old Commander Qi is, there's no way he'll agree to this marriage, Xiao Chr-yeh mused, looking over the Li Bei Armored Cavalry's expenditure accounts for the year. Xiao Jiming sat at the desk, going through military papers. It's hard to say. Xiao Chr-yeh raised his eyes. How would this benefit Qidong? You've been in Qudu this long and have taken command of the 8 great battalions. Xiao Jiming didn't look up from signing documents. Haven't you reviewed the 8 great battalions' accounts? The Court of Judicial Review showed them to me during their cleanup. All the surplus money and provisions from the 8 great battalions were supplied to the Imperial Army this year to make up our shortfall. Why do you ask? Xiao Jiming pondered the document in front of him. When Hua Xichen was still alive, the annual salary and provisions budget for the 8 great battalions was several times that of the Bianzhong Commandery. That money Guan couldn't account for. Where's it gone? Hua Xichen kept 2 account books. Couldn't the Empress Dowager have done the same? Money flows in and out, but the audit remains a constant. As long as Hua Xichen instated his own man as the auditing official reviewing the ledgers of the 8 great battalions, they'd have been able to write anything they wanted in the annual accounts. The properties under the Hua clan might be searched and their possessions confiscated, but who dares touch the Empress Dowager's private coffers? That money is Hua Xiangyi's dowry. Whether for official or personal reasons, Qi Shi ought to be tempted. Qi Juyin is the current Grand Marshal of Qidong's 5 commanderies, said Xiao Chr-yeh, displeased. She will never agree to it. Finally, Xiao Jiming looked at Xiao Chr-yeh. Even if she disagrees, she can't stop it. Xiao Chr-yeh lay back and thought for a spell. We've been on good terms with the Qi clan for years now. If Qi Shi really marries the Third Lady, Qidong will no longer consider Li Bei a brother-in-arms. That's of little importance. Once the Bianxia tribe attacks, everyone will still have to fight side by side, and with Third Lady Hua on their side, the Qidong garrison troops won't lack for money. Then tell them to pay for Li Bei's horses in the future. A cold glint shone in Xiao Chr-yeh's eyes. How long can the Empress Dowager's private coffer last them? Providing for 200,000 soldiers isn't like raising a dozen lapdogs. The military expenditure will shock her. A single person can't possibly sustain it. With the Qi clan backing her, the Empress Dowager has the means to break the stalemate in Chudu. Once power returns to her hands, she'll easily recoup the money. Xiao Chr-yeh sat up. This union must not be. There are ways, of course. Xiao Chr-yeh looked at him. The easiest is to kill Third Lady Hua. Xiao Jiming glanced up at him in surprise. You are also a thorn in others' flesh. The 8th grade clans would be all too happy for you to give them an excuse. The rumors are everywhere. If we try to stop it after the new year, it'll be too late. Xiao Jiming pondered in silence. Finally, he said, if the Empress Dowager wants this union, she must make an appearance, and the court official's feast is her only opportunity. Given what's at stake, Hailiang Yi may not be willing to let it happen. When the time comes, there will be a war of words. Some of the last 3 generations of Hua daughters were married out to Qidong. If we delve deep enough in the records of the Ministry of Rights, Third Lady Hua may turn out to be Qi Shiyu's distant blood relative. Suddenly, Xiao Chr-yeh set aside the ledger and laughed. Yes, I want Third Lady Hua to become a distant blood relative of Qi Shiyu. This marriage must not come to pass. Xiao Chr-yeh got up and opened the door to summon Zhao Hui. It's the spring festival, Xiao Chr-yeh said. You haven't gone to see your younger sister yet. Zhao Hui turned to Xiao Jiming, who smiled. He understood. I'll pay her a visit tomorrow morning. Han Cheng, 3rd son of lawful birth from the Han clan of the 8th grade clans and erstwhile assistant commander of the 8th grade battalions, had only recently taken up his position as the new chief commander of the embroidered uniform guard. He had happened to be off duty during the autumn hunt, so he did not follow Shiguan, nor did he heed the Empress Dowager's commands. Rumor had it that he was still asleep when the imperial army knocked on his door. By sheer dumb luck, he'd escaped the autumn wind that swept the Hua faction clean. Shun Zichuan, however, knew this man was Xue Xiuzhou's plant. On the eve of the court official's feast, the embroidered uniform guard sorted out their patrol schedule. Shun Zichuan had planned ahead to stay close to the throne, so it came as no surprise when he received the authority token. Han Cheng personally delivered it to Shun Zichuan in the embroidered uniform guard's office. The candles stand ready. They lack only the match. I'll be on duty at the banquet, too. No matter what. His Majesty mustn't come to harm. Of course. Shun Zichuan affixed his authority token to his waist and said with a smile, We're depending on you, Your Excellency. Even if Han Cheng was apprehensive, he couldn't show it. He simply repeated, If anything goes awry tonight, it's a death sentence for us both. But if we succeed, the embroidered uniform guard can swipe some of our own back from the hands of the Imperial Army. Everyone will live well after that, and good days will be upon us. Please rest assured, Your Excellency, Shun Zichuan said, solemn. We brothers here are of one mind. Nothing will go wrong. See, I just don't like it when things like that are said. Okay, let's go. Seeing how composed and confident he was, Han Cheng breathed a sigh of relief. The snow fell fast and thick outside. It was still falling when dawn broke on the day of the feast. Before the court official's feast began, the emperor performed the sacrificial ceremony to the gods and ancestors. The imperial guard stood at the ready. They had been on full alert since early morning. Dressed neatly in his court attire, Xiao Chr-yeh came face to face with Han Cheng as he stepped through the palace gates. As they exchanged greetings and small talk, Xiao Chr-yeh spotted Shun Zichuan behind him. The left guard stands before the throne, Xiao Chr-yeh said to Han Cheng, eyeing Shun Zichuan as if he were a stranger. Why has the position been assigned to an embroidered uniform guard below the rank of company commander? The embroidered uniform guard has been reorganized. Many positions are vacant, Han Cheng said, following the line of Xiao Chr-yeh's gaze. Everyone on duty today is a first-rate expert. They may appear junior in rank, but many of them are only being kept back to await the right time for promotion. Xiao Chr-yeh was wary the instant he laid eyes on Shun Zichuan, but his authority over the embroidered uniform guard didn't extend to commanding a change in post. No matter how many pegs the embroidered uniform guard had been knocked down, they and the Eastern Depot served directly at the emperor's pleasure. Unless Li Jianheng said something, anyone who gave summary orders would be overstepping their authority. As if sensing his thoughts, Sun Zichuan glanced over at him, eyes heavy with some meaning Chr-yeh couldn't read. Ahead of them, the elephant training office had already herded the animals out. Li Jianheng was about to step out of the hall. Unable to linger, Chr-yeh marched away. Today was the first time Li Jianheng had held the ceremonial great sword. It was so heavy he could barely lift it. He hadn't even stepped out the doors of the palace hall, yet he could already feel his neck aching from the weight of the crown atop his head. The coronation robe, with its sun and moon on either shoulder and stars heavy across his back, had finally smothered his official carefree attitude and given him a trace of sober, imposing bearing. Footnote number 6. The coronation robe with its sun and moon on either shoulder and stars heavy across his back are part of the 12 symbols of sovereignty on the emperor's ceremonial robe. In addition to the sun, moon, and 3 stars, others include a dragon, a pheasant, a mountain, a pair of goblets, seaweed, an axe head, and a traditional Fu symbol. Palm sweating, Li Jianheng adjusted his hold on the great sword before stepping over the threshold. The court elephants, draped with red velvet and gold saddles, flanked the path. Hundreds of officials in the courtyard kowtowed and chanted wishes of longevity. Li Jianheng stood atop the steps, taking in the panorama of thick clouds in the east, the sky and earth cloaked in a blanket of boundless snow. From where he looked down high above them, he seemed to float among the clouds. The deafening chants of "Long live your majesty" reverberated in his ears. Li Jianheng's heartbeat quickened, and a surprised pleasure gradually crept over his face. His eyes moved from Hailiang Yi down to Xiao Jiming, to all the living creatures of the world kneeling before him, the one and only supreme ruler. So this is how it feels to be emperor. He couldn't help but grasp the great sword tighter. Standing on the receiving end of this grand show of obeisance, he felt as if he really had obtained the strength and courage to contend with the heavens. It was entirely unlike the feeling of sitting in the imperial court. It was the same thrill he had felt as everyone dropped to their knees before him for the first time at the autumn hunt. Li Jianheng made his way slowly up the long staircase toward the ceremonial terrace, reveling in every step of this journey covered in glory. Of the tens of thousands at his feet, only Sun Zichuan slowly raised his head. He looked past Li Jianheng and saw not only the tall stairs, but also the dark, threatening sky lurking behind the dancing snow. As the feast began, the court of imperial entertainments brought out dish after dish, while the winery kept the cups filled to the brim. Li Jianheng was fond of sweets, so the imperial bakery had produced quite a number of silk-nested tiger's eye candies. Li Jianheng sat on the dragon throne. The Empress Dowager and Hua Xiangyi sat beside him, followed by Mu Zhu, who had just been conferred the title of imperial concubine. Oh. Sun Zichuan and Han Cheng stood at the bottom of the steps, facing the imperial army. A eunuch from the imperial food service knelt behind Sun Zichuan's right shoulder. Every dish on Li Jianheng's table had to be tasted before he could eat. The emperor was in high spirits. The wine had gone to his head, and he repeatedly urged all in attendance to drink up. Looking down from the high dais, he said, "Ever since we ascended the throne, we've been fortunate to be assisted by wise and capable hands. With a clear mirror like Secretariat Elder High by our side, we daren't forget to self-reflect for even a day." He had a habit of shooting his mouth off as soon as he drank too much, and today was no exception. "We are incredibly grateful to Elder Secretariat High and wish to regard Secretariat Elder High as the second father of the court. Such an honor has never been accorded to other Secretariat Elders in the past, but today we shall—" Second father? How could he say such a thing? The color drained from Hailiang Yi's face. Before Li Jianheng finished, He had already risen to his feet in astonishment, about to kneel in protest. Li Jianheng let out a drunken belch, waving his hand unsteadily. There's no need for that, Secretariat Elder. It's no more than what we should do. I think it is improper. The Empress Dowager peered down at Hai Liang Yi and paused a moment, taking in Hai Liang Yi's shock. Turning to Li Jianheng, she murmured, Secretariat Elder Hai is a leader revered by scholars across the land. His character is solemn and dignified. Since entering the court to serve as an official, he has conducted himself with virtue, always candid and resolute in his speech. Bestowing an address of second father on this kind of trusted aide may demonstrate your Majesty's favor, but it would negate the Secretariat Elder's impartiality in his critiques. Encouraged by her mild demeanor, Li Jianheng laughed. The legendary King Xiang valued loyalty and honored his advisor Fan Zeng as his second father. Footnote number 7. Xiang Yu was a powerful warlord instrumental to dismantling the Qin dynasty. He was eventually defeated by Liu Bang, whom he attempted to assassinate at the famous Hongmeng Banquet. Fan Zeng was Xiang Yu's closest advisor. Today, we likewise wish to express our gratitude for the Secretariat Elder's wise counsel and advise him as second father. It's meant to bring us closer, and the title itself would be an ever-present reminder for our own self-reflection. Come, Secretariat Elder, what say you? Head already sunk low in a kowtow, Hai Liang Yi resolutely called out, Absolutely not. Li Jianheng felt as if he had been doused with cold water. Such a sternly uttered refusal drowned his warm enthusiasm, turning it instantly to displeasure. His expression underwent several changes before he eventually bent his mouth in a smile. It's only meant to signify how close we feel to the Secretariat Elder. What does it matter? Your Majesty is the highest sovereign of the land, poles apart from King Xiang, a warlord of the past presiding over a narrow corner, Hai Liang Yi said. This old subject was born in the mountain ridges of Hezhou. I am but an uncouth, lowly servant of the throne. How could I share the address of father with the divine and sagely Guangcheng Emperor? Li Jianheng's original intent was to curry favor with Hai Liang Yi, and thus all the scholars in the land. He wished to demonstrate that he was not an idiot who disrespected the pursuit of knowledge, but clearly he had been limited in his readings. How could he have known a mere address would elicit such a vehement objection? All at once, he was astride a tiger with no way to safely dismount. The sheer awkwardness sobered him up several degrees. Awash in embarrassment, Li Jianheng attempted to gloss over the whole thing. If Secretariat Elder is unwilling, then forget it. It is this old subject's opinion that those at the bottom will imitate the propensities of those at the top, Hai Liang Yi continued. If His Majesty establishes this precedent tonight, others will follow suit in the future. When that happens, cliques and factions will form, impede the court, and jeopardize the state. It has been merely a month since the dust from the Hua faction case has settled. Past experiences must serve as a guide for the future, not be forgotten after a moment's peace. Truly, Your Majesty should have drunk more moderately tonight. Getting scolded is so funny. Li Jianheng clenched the wine cup and surveyed the crowd below. It was only when he saw the officials hanging their heads and not daring to look directly at him that his fury eased. He couldn't vent his anger on Hai Liang Yi, but neither did he want to acknowledge his fault. He shifted restlessly on the dragon throne. After tasting the sweetness of submission from all under the sun, how could he willingly accept such censure? He was the emperor. In the end, Li Jianheng swallowed the last mouthful of wine in his cup and said with reddened eyes, "Forget it. Help Secretariat Elder Hai back to his seat." Hai Liang Yi was well aware that this was not the right moment to admonish him, but it was hard to change his frank and outspoken nature. This aged subject still has something to say. Li Jianheng pressed his lips into a tight line and said nothing. Silence reigned in the banquet hall. Hai Liang Yi knelt where he was, awaiting the emperor's response. They were frozen in a deadlock. No one touched their chopsticks. Even the reed pipes had stopped playing. Suddenly, a sharp clack echoed through the hall. Chr-yeh had laid down his chopsticks on the table before him. Now he barked out a boisterous laugh. Oh, it delights me to no end to see such a close relationship between your majesty and the Secretariat Elder, a prime example of a sagely ruler and virtuous subject, their interplay as harmonious as that referenced in ancient writings. To be graced with such a wise ruler and upstanding official in our great Zhou is an indication that a new age of prosperity is upon us. I love this man. His Majesty's generous acceptance of open speech and criticism is a blessing to all his officials. Xue Xiuzhou raised his cup. On this New Year's night, why not raise a toast to this estimable scene? The officials lifted their cups and chorused their well wishes. Li Jianheng was mollified somewhat by the sounds of the toast. When he saw that Hai Liangyi was still on his knees, he heaved a sigh. Secretariat Elder, please rise. The crisis had been smoothly averted. Eyes on Chr-yeh, the Empress Dowager was quiet a moment before raising her voice in the hall. That's right. Our Supreme Commander is here. It's said that a man's ultimate destiny is in starting a family and establishing one's career. Does Z-choo-ANNE have any young lady in mind? Shun Zechuan, too, glanced toward Chr-yeh. Your Majesty. Chr-yeh grinned without the slightest scruple. Look at me. Which of the esteemed ladies in Chudu would be willing to lower themselves to marry me? Besides, I do not aspire to start a family or establish a career. The Supreme Commander is too modest, said the Empress Dowager. Noble sons with your prospects are few and far between in the capital. And with that face, there are no shortage of beauties beckoning when you cross the bridge on the East Street. Xiao, if you leave him be, it may be too late. Xiao Jiming was all politeness. Our father thinks his temperament is too volatile yet. He fears Ye will hold a nice girl back. The Empress Dowager turned to Li Jianheng with a smile. See how none of them are in a hurry. Why? When the Prince of Li Bei was his age, he was already a few years into his marriage. Li Jianheng had yet to recover from his previous setback and was still feeling low. Not daring to leave the Empress Dowager hanging, he glanced at Xiao and said, Imperial Mother may not be aware, but Z-choo-ANNE is reckless. Not just any noble lady from Chudu would be able to handle him. And that's no way to look at things. You can't delay his marriage without good reason, the Empress Dowager chided. It doesn't have to be a noble lady from Chudu. The Hulian Marquis's daughter, Commandery Princess Zhao Yue, is around Z-choo-ANNE's age. They'd make an excellent match. The Hulian Marquis was the Marquis of Chuen-chang and a member of the Fei clan, one of the 8 great clans. This seemingly casual suggestion from the Empress Dowager was indeed well matched with Xiao-Chiyeh's status. Fei Kun, the Hulian Marquis, promptly lifted his cup in a toast and glanced in Xiao Jiming's direction. Xiao-Chiyeh had expected the Empress Dowager to discuss Hua Xiangyi's marriage at the banquet, not his own. Outright rejection was not an option, but neither did he plan to go along with this haphazard arrangement. Princess Zhao Yue. Caught off guard, Li Jianheng stuttered as he looked at Xiao-Chiyeh in a daze. An idea struck him. The nation is still mourning. We're afraid it's not appropriate to confer a marriage at this time. It's one thing to confer a marriage, and another to complete it. There are no auspicious days coming up, anyway. We could establish the engagement first and wait for summertime to seek an auspicious day for the wedding. The Empress Dowager added affectionately, Zhao Yue and Xiangyi are bosom friends from childhood. It would be a blessing for them to be married at the same time. In saying nothing about whom Hua Xiangyi was marrying and pushing Princess Zhao Yue to Xiao-Chiyeh, the Empress Dowager sent a clear message. Xiao-Chiyeh's marriage was a state affair, while Hua Xiangyi's was a private affair. Qi Juyin's expression was solemn, but she remained surprisingly quiet. As soon as Lu Guangbai saw this, he knew it didn't bode well. Qi Shi must have already given his approval for the betrothal and instructed Qi Juyin to say nothing. But this matter of marrying Princess Zhao Yue was completely out of the question. If this engagement was settled, the Empress Dowager could use the occasion of her marriage to elevate Zhao Yue's status from a commandery to a true imperial princess, a status equal to the emperor's sister or daughter. An imperial princess's husband had no power in the Zhao Empire, only a title and name. Chr-yeh would be stripped of the military power he had only just grasped. The wine in Chr-yeh's throat burned like fire. He had risen to his feet when the Empress Dowager spoke again. Heir Xiao married the daughter of the Earl of Biansha from the Bianjuan commandery. Your son must be around 4 or 5 years older now. Is that right? He is 4 years old, Xiao Jiming replied. The son of the heir is already 4 years old, yet his uncle General Lu remains unwed. She's just pulling out all the stops. The Empress Dowager looked toward Lu Guangbai and added, Bianjuan is a desert land. Standing guard there must take a great toll on the general. Surely seeing you properly wed would put the Earl of Biansha's mind at ease. General Lu is a similar age to Heir Xiao. Is it also not the general's aspiration to start a family? Lu Guangbai was momentarily lost for words. Your Majesty, Jiao-yue is a girl with a lively and playful disposition, the Empress Dowager continued. It's true that Z-choo-ANNE is quite reckless. The general seems much more reliable. But Z-choo-ANNE, what do you think? If Xiao Z-choo-ANNE wouldn't marry Princess Jiao-yue, Lu Guangbai would have to. This trap laid over the banquet was designed to pin him down. Xiao Qr-yeh had sent Zhao Hui to bribe someone from the Ministry of Rites days ago. He'd only been waiting for Her Majesty to open her mouth tonight so he could testify to the fact that Hua Xiangyi was a distant blood relative of Qi Shi-yu. With the laws of propriety and a generational gap blocking the way, the union would have fallen apart. But the Empress Dowager hadn't given him any chance to counter. Who would have guessed it would be his future at stake this evening? As this dilemma pressed down on him, Xiao Qr-yeh's gaze met Shun Zichuan's for the briefest flicker through the crowd, just long enough for him to catch the look in Shun Zichuan's eyes. The eunuch from the Imperial Food Service was delivering new dishes on behalf of the bakery, meekly dividing out the portion to be tasted for poison. He picked up the chopsticks and looked at Li Jianheng, an arm's length away from him. Xiao Qr-yeh took a step forward. Your Majesty. Li Jianheng was frowning, listening to this confrontation play out. Suddenly, he sensed the stillness of the eunuch beside him and glanced over. What are you standing... In a blink, the eunuch clenched the gilded chopsticks in his fist and jabbed them toward Li Jianheng's neck. Well, this is a great diversion to keep the marriage talks off the table for now. I'm sorry. Li Jianheng had no time to react. All he could do was watch as the sharp tip of those chopsticks came at him. His body stiffened and his eyes went wide. He couldn't move even a finger. And that fraction of a second as the color drained from everyone's faces... Avalanche spray. Yes, let's go. Sorry. Avalanche sprang from its sheath, its straight blade glinting coldly. Li Jianheng's throat tightened around a scream. Before the sound left his throat, hot blood splattered onto the front of his robe. Li Jianheng's shout burst from his lips. Guards! The eunuch's head toppled from his shoulders and fell into Li Jianheng's lap. Ew. Gripping the arms of his throne for support, Li Jianheng breathed the stench of blood as hands grabbed the headless body about to pitch forward onto him. Shun Zichuan tossed the corpse aside, then turned and commanded coldly, Protect His Majesty. Good Ching-ching drew his saber. A row of snow-white glints cut the air as the embroidered uniformed guard stepped between the throne and the imperial army, a solid and impregnable fortress shielding Li Jianheng. Xiao Qr-yeh could do nothing but look up the steps as Shun Zichuan over the heads of the guard. The precarious balance they had maintained until this moment finally shattered. Shun Zichuan looked down from above with a meaningful smile, the look in his eyes heavy enough to trample Xiao Qr-yeh's chest. Chapter 47. Power Struggle. Li Jianheng, horrified, kicked the head away with shaking legs. He wanted nothing more than to cast aside appearances and curl up like a child on the dragon throne. Blood roared in his ears as he watched the scarlet stain soak through his robe. For a long time he couldn't utter a word, as if a hand grasped his throat. Dropping to one knee, Shun Zichuan said solemnly, Fear not, Your Majesty. The assassin has been slain. This humble subject was late to your rescue and should be severely punished. Li Jianheng's limbs were paralyzed. He struggled to hold onto the armrests. He looked away from the fallen corpse toward Shan Zechuan, half choking with sobs as he grasped feebly at his savior's sleeve. "No, not late at all. You, Lanzhou, you've done well. We almost—" "Summon the imperial physician." The Empress Dowager hurried over, ignoring the corpse entirely. She held Li Jianheng's hand in her own and called out softly to him, "Your Majesty, Your Majesty." Still gripped by panic, Li Jianheng gulped through a dry throat and jerked his head out from under the Empress Dowager's to grasp Shun Zechuan's sleeve more tightly. "Stay here," he pleaded. "Stay here with the embroidered uniform guard to protect me." "The embroidered uniform guard are the Emperor's own guards," Shun Zechuan said without blinking. "For your Majesty, the embroidered uniform guard will willingly brave fire and flood. Allow this humble subject to escort your Majesty back to Mingley Hall." Everyone in the banquet hall was badly shaken. Xue stepped forward and barked, "Arrest and detain everyone from the food service, court of entertainments, bakery, and winery. To think there was an assassin hiding among the Son of Heaven's personal attendants. All those involved in arranging the inner palace eunuchs and guard detail will be held accountable." "Who was in charge of patrols tonight?" The banquet hall fell silent. Chr-yeh bowed. "Oh, God." "Your Majesty, it was this subject." The Empress Dowager did not pursue the matter further. Instead, she looked at Li Jianheng. The other officials all stared at him too. For a eunuch to join the Imperial Food Service, he had to have a clean family background and personal history. His actions and merits since the first day he'd entered the palace, where he'd worked in the 24 yamen, and even which inner palace eunuchs he'd been friendly with, all must be investigated. On top of that, everyone he came in contact with had to be checked and noted in the official record. Chr-yeh was responsible for overseeing the security. He ought to have vetted everyone here before the court officials' feast. The assassin had walked in through his layers of defense. There was no way he could escape responsibility. Pale and drenched in cold sweat, Li Jianheng said, "Take the eunuchs of the various offices into custody first. Before he could finish, he fainted dead away. It was a sleepless night. Li Jianheng lay insensible in the inner chamber, imperial physicians hovering at his bedside while the Empress Dowager once more listened to a diagnosis behind the hanging curtain. Hai Liangyi waited just outside the curtain with her permission. Han Cheng led the embroidered uniform guard to stand guard under the eaves, sabers in hand, while the court officials knelt outside. The first night of the year was bitterly cold. Many elderly officials were already shivering, propped up only by sheer force of will. An eerie silence filled the palace, adding another layer of cold to the night's chill. Xiao was not among those shivering officials. He was needed by the Ministry of Justice and the Chief Surveillance Bureau to carry out arrests of the implicated palace eunuchs. The Imperial Army was likewise detained, and its assistant commander, responsible for screening those on duty tonight, had already had his authority token revoked and now sat in jail beside the eunuchs. Inside the hall, no brazier was lit. The only light came from the lanterns. Xiao sat to the right of Kong Qiu, the Minister of Justice. Ceng Yu, the Chief Surveillance Bureau's left censor-in-chief, and Fu Linye, the right censor-in-chief, sat in the more prestigious position on Kong Qiu's left. Under normal circumstances, Xiao and the Minister of Justice would have conducted the trial together, with equal authority. Due to the conflict of interest this time, he had no choice but to accept this seating arrangement and hand supervisory power over to the two head officials from the Chief Surveillance Bureau. This year had truly been a time of troubles, each fresh wave of problems arriving before those that came before had subsided. The three judicial offices had never presided over back-to-back cases like this before, especially major ones that concerned the emperor's life. Kong Qiu finished his long cold tea in silence as he waited for the next prisoner to be summoned. From the moment they sat down, They wore solemn expressions. No one made any small talk. Everyone knew it was not the time to make light of things. Xiao turned his thumb ring in contemplation. This was a premeditated act, just as Xiao Fuzi's death had been. It had upended everything the moment it happened, but that instant was a careful facade, the work of countless strings pulled behind the scenes concealing an even deeper motive. The inner palace eunuchs from the imperial food service were charged with tasting dishes for the Son of Heaven. Each one, top to bottom, had been thoroughly vetted going back 3 generations. Turning such a person into an assassin would be terribly difficult, yet also very simple. Whoever incited them must be someone who came into contact with inner palace eunuchs, or a eunuch who was working for powers on the outside. No one else could coerce or entice a eunuch into murdering the emperor. Chr-yeh suddenly recalled something. His fingers paused on his thumb ring just as the summoned prisoner was brought up. The assistant commander of the imperial army. Kong Qiu wasted no words. As the Imperial Army's assistant commander, you are responsible for evaluating the armed personnel of the Imperial Army who stood before the throne tonight, as well as the food-tasting eunuchs arranged by the food service. What do you know about this eunuch? The assistant commander was Meng Jue, a man from a military household whom Xiao had promoted in the 6th year of Xiande. He was a prudent man who had originally served as the office manager in the Imperial Army. He answered steadily, his gaze unwavering. The eunuch assassin went by the name Guisheng. He was 26 and came from the city of Chun-ching. His father was registered in a civilian household residing on Baishui Street and passed from illness in the 6th year of Xiande. Guisheng was his only child. He entered the palace during the Yongyi era and worked there for 12 years. He joined the food service in the 1st year of Xiande and started tasting dishes for the late emperor 3 years ago. He had no unusual hobbies and associated with very few people. Kong Qiu thought for a moment. Who arranged for him to taste the dishes tonight? A female attendant from the food service, Fu Ling. Why does that name sound familiar? First, Kong Qiu looked at the men from the Chief Surveillance Bureau, then at Xiao. He nodded. The weapon he used was the same gilded chopsticks reserved for imperial use. A body search by the Imperial Guard would have found nothing. How about this? Assistant Commander Meng, please wait here. Summon Fu Ling from the food service. Meng Jue stepped aside. Throughout, he never made eye contact with Xiao. Anyone who had expected Xiao to be nervous would have been disappointed. He knew full well this assassination could not strip him of military power. Perhaps he would be punished with a salary cut, but that was far from a disaster. At the crucial moment, he had been too far away. There was no way he could have beaten Zechuan to it and saved the emperor. So he was not derelict in his duty. The seating was arranged according to the demands of etiquette, so no one could fault him for his distance either. And there was one thing more. The speed at which Zechuan had drawn his blade was much too fast. His saber had returned to its sheath before the assassin's head rolled. It was entirely beyond the speed he had exhibited that rainy night on the hunting grounds. Even if Xiao had been standing right beside him, he might not have beat him to the draw. Thus the trial itself didn't worry him. What worried Xiao was what awaited after. His mind was already working to keep this fire from spreading to him. He thought again of that look in Zechuan's eyes. The embroidered uniformed guard's usual practice was to have a period of promotion once every 8 years. Members were assigned to one of the 12 offices according to the classification of their household register when they entered the guard, then promoted according to performance. Exceptions were rare. Zechuan's family background was unusual to say the least. Although he was officially absolved of guilt, he didn't technically qualify for military status. If he wanted to command the embroidered uniform guard, he had to find another avenue to promotion. Xiao had been knocking the embroidered uniform guard down for the past few months to consolidate the Imperial Army's monopoly over military power. But equally to guard against Shun Zichuan's advancement through the ranks. The political landscape in Chudu was chaotic, yet the divisions between factions were clear as night and day. Everyone was familiar with one another, and whether they collaborated or fought, it was all out of self-interest. Shun Zichuan was the sole unknown. Chr-yeh had tried every possible method to sound him out, yet he still couldn't pin down Shun Zichuan's true goal. Until he could work out Shun Zichuan's motives, any cooperation between them would be without trust. He had hoped Shun Zichuan would stay quietly at the bottom of the ladder. This assassination was his answer. Impossible. Shun Zichuan was his own blade. He would carve his own bloody path. He was not content to remain at the beck and call of others. He wanted to tear others apart, not obey. What could one night of pleasure change? That was merely a howl of resentment vented in the pitch-dark night, an animal panting born of entangled desire. The rough union of their bodies had felt like the shared suffering of wounded creatures, but sentiment was not enough to turn either of them from their path. Chr-yeh would never give up the power he held. This was the blade on which his own survival depended. If he could not return to Li Bei, he must grasp this blade and never let go. Likewise, Shun Zichuan would never allow himself to kneel while others decided his fate. He wanted to rise through the ranks. He had to. His fingers curled into a fist. Shun Zichuan was at the heart of this plot. Who were his accomplices? Leaving Li Jianheng under his physician's care, Shun Zichuan hung up his token to get a little rest. As he wiped his hands in the duty office, he heard the creak of the door behind him. I thought we agreed Han Cheng should be the one who saved the emperor tonight. Xiao rolled up his sleeves and slipped his hands into the cold water basin in the room. He smiled. We brothers have been played for fools by Lord Shun. The situation was critical. Shun Zichuan didn't look behind him. If Han Cheng was capable, then of course he should have done the saving, but he was slow. What could I do? This incident won't take Xiao down. At most, he'll be impeached for negligence in supervision. You, however, have shown your claws in front of him. Even if you move up the ladder now, he's bound to make things hard for you in the future. We're passengers in the same boat, Your Excellency. If he gives me a hard time, said Shun Zichuan, glancing back with a smile, do you think you'll have an easy one? I've heard there's a breed of mad dog ruthless enough to attack its brothers. Xiao looked at Shun Zichuan. It's being in the same boat as someone who will use one of his own without a second thought that keeps me from resting easy. What are you saying? Shun Zichuan asked. My brothers are precisely the ones who benefited from our actions tonight. As for me, am I not the painted target pushed before Xiao? From now on, I'm the thorn in Xiao's side. He ought to hate me to death. The friendship between His Majesty and Xiao runs deep. His rescue of His Majesty at the Nanlin hunting grounds is impossible to forget. You stood out tonight, but you can hardly replace Xiao. The first step is the hardest, Shun Zichuan smiled. If His Majesty was truly so grateful to Xiao for saving his life, he wouldn't keep him trapped in Chudu. This thing we call gratitude is only worth so much. Xiao wiped his hands and laughed. Despite the slight departure in execution, our plan was still a success. Please look out for me in the future, Lord Judge. The judge of the embroidered uniform guard was a 5th-rank official post. Xiao was pointing out how high Shun Zichuan could rise once the emperor began conferring awards for this night. Shun Zichuan's expression didn't change. The eunuchs from the food service will have to stand trial. The Minister of Justice, Kong Qiu, is a principled man and impartial judge. Your people had better not buckle under his interrogation. Since we dare to do it, surely we don't fear an investigation. Xiao rearranged his sleeves and offered courteously. I hope we can continue to work together in the new year. May we soon achieve our heart's desires. Meeting his eyes, Shun Zichuan said genially, I'm indebted to Your Excellency for your care. I have no doubt I will fulfill my long-cherished wish. All right, everyone. That concludes the reading of chapters 45 through 47. And it was all very juicy. So really quickly, well, it actually won't be quick because I'm doing a recap now, just so there's less I have to cover in a future recap live session, whenever that will be. I don't know. So if you understood everything just fine, this is your time to skip or basically stop listening to the video. I will be putting my own personal thoughts in there as well. But if you understood everything, this is where you can leave. If not, we're going to recap everything together. Starting with chapter 45. So, of course, this leaves off from when Shen Zechuan and Xiao Chr-yeh were in the library together, and he, being Xiao Chr-yeh, mentioned the handkerchief and pointed out that Shen Zechuan was blushing. So, opening this chapter, we see that yes, Shen Zechuan never gave back the handkerchief, okay? So he's been sniffing it like crazy. It's tucked into his sleeve pocket, and he decides that he's just going to ignore that whole thing, just not address it. And he's like, it's late. My Shifu and I are going to go back home. And of course, Xiao Qie is like, I mean, you can sleep here and the East Wing is empty. And he's just like, yeah, we're leaving. So he leaves with his very, very drunk Shifu, and Xiao Qie tells Chen Yang to keep an eye on the 8 great clans now that he's gotten that warning from Shen Zechuan, to see who's moving, who's doing things, right? Then we move forward to them getting to the Temple of Guilt, and we learn why Qiao Tianya is indebted to Grand Mentor Qi. So, during the Guangcheng Emperor's reign, his father and brother were framed as corrupt officials and sentenced to death, among some other officials, right? But it was Grand Mentor Qi who helped save the members of their clan, and it was about 20 of them. So then, the Chief Surveillance Bureau, what it says is they had gotten reports that Qiao Tianya's father had properties and land from unknown origins. And so Grand Mentor Qi did a reinvestigation, cleared his name as well as other people's names in the Ministry of War, then betrothed his daughter to the eldest son of the Qiao family, which was not Qiao Tianya. But anyway, so eventually though, the Eastern Palace, which is where, Grand Mentor Qi was falsely accused years later, and Grand Mentor Qi was demoted from mentor to a freaking commoner. And he actually went to the Temple of Guilt with the former crown prince, which we know he was eventually killed, right, by Shun Wei and Jilei's scheme and all that stuff. And all of the people who were in the Eastern Palace were to be investigated. And it's funny because this first time around, Grand Mentor Qi had saved Xiao Tianya's whole clan, especially his father and his brother. But after all of this happened and Grand Mentor Qi ended up, falling from grace, if you will, Mr. Qiao decided to defect to the Empress Dowager's side. But even though he did that, he still ended up being imprisoned again. Yeah, not only that, but he and his eldest son were beheaded, and the rest of the Qiao family were banished to Shuotian Pass, and Grand Mentor Qi's daughter perished. She died. Also, really quickly, I just want to go back because I did miss a note in the opening of this chapter when Xiao Chr-yeh was pressing at Shen Zechuan and trying to he was thinking about pressing for more from Shen Zechuan, but then it says, haste, however, was no path to success. And so he just kind of chilled out for the moment, took his little small victory. I wanted to teach you all an expression, which it's translated, not called, haste makes waste. And I think I don't need to explain that. But anyway, it's yu, su, zi, bu, da. So those are all the characters slowly. Yu, su, zi, bu, da. Yu, su, zi, bu, da. Haste makes waste. In other words, rushing things is going to ruin your plans. So Xiao Chr-yeh is doing what he's doing. He's trying to wear Shen Zechuan down, but he's not going to rush things. Okay, sorry. Now back to the plot. So anyway, they ended up locked up, dead, beheaded. All of that stuff happened. Blah, blah, snore. Then we move on, and we know that Qiao Tianya was Qiao Songyue. So that should be clear for everyone now as far as that identity. He pledges his life to serving Lanzhou, his life and his death. It is not his own. He is a blade, right? Shun Zichuan is coming of age also at this point, and Grand Mentor T is like, we have a gift for you, accept it well. So he also says on page 64 precisely what Shun Zichuan's desires and goals are. And I just felt like it was important for these to be mentioned because this whole time, especially Xiao Qr-yeh, everyone, wants to know what is it that Shun Zichuan wants? What is his goal? So here we have Grand Mentor T, who is saying that you can stand on your own now, but this road will be long. Killing your sworn enemies, dismantling the 8 great clans, overturning wrongful judgments, bringing peace to Zhongbo. None of it will be easy. So these are things that he wants to do. It's pretty clear already he wants to dismantle the 8 great clans, especially considering the little bit of information he shared with Xiao Chr-yeh, even though he's working with them now, like Xue Xiuzhou and Xi Hongshuan to quote unquote unite the 8 great clans. But yes, overturn wrongful judgments and bringing peace to Zhongbo, and of course, killing his sworn enemies, whoever the hell they are. So anyway, then he's like, Jigang has a blade for you, accept it well. So then this blade that Jigang gives to him was reforged. Again, it's 13 inches long with a width of 2 fingers, and it's something that he can make quick work with. It's very light, good for attacks, very simply adorned, which I think expresses Shun Zichuan and just his physique and his demeanor and everything very much. Like, he's never in anything very lavish. He's always in his white robes, simply adorned. White, just clean, nice, and pure. And I don't mean pure sexually, but you know what I mean. Just pure. And I thought it was quite interesting because for the description on page 65, where it's talking about how it's an excellent saber, expertly forged and thoroughly tempered, and then it says, even left to gather dust for so long, its naked blade radiated a grim, imposing presence. It was as if it were immersed in a clear stream on an autumn day, pristine, untainted, and haughty, as though it knew it was without peer. And I'm not gonna lie, I felt like this was describing Shun Zichuan himself, because thinking about even left to gather dust for so long, I think about the 5 years that he spent in the Temple of Guilt, where, pretty much no one cared about him or whatever, but he still was just like this radiant, imposing presence, right? Even coming out, he wasn't some frail little scrawny dude that just looked like he was on death's doorstep when he exited, and again, he just has this demeanor about him that I think is pristine, untainted, haughty, and it's without peer. And he may not necessarily think that he's without peer from a good perspective, even if he's thinking from more of a cold-blooded killer perspective like he had before. I would say that his mindset, the way he does things, it's still without peer. So I thought that was really cool. So anyway, as we go forward, he decides to give it the name Avalanche, which of course you guys know avalanche means it could be ice or rock or snow that is rapidly flowing down a mountain. And you know what? I think that's a fitting name for him as well. I mean, for his thing as well. So anyway, then we have the court officials' feast is coming soon. There are the 4 great generals that are coming back, as well as regional officials, all meeting, all returning to the capital. And one of the things is for the coronation of Li Jianheng as emperor. This is seen as the perfect time for the Empress Dowager to make a comeback if she's going to make one. And with nobody by her side, she'd have to find external allies because everyone has been killed, stripped of their power, sent away, or something like that. And so, of course, we have Shun Zichuan speaking with Grand Mentor T, and essentially the plan is to marry off her niece, Hua Xiangyi, who we haven't heard a lot about. But the thing is, she had never, not because he didn't favor her, the previous emperor, but she had never been married off to anyone. And the thing is, if she had become a princess of Great Zhou, then her marriage would not be for the Empress Dowager to control. It would be a state affair that would be handled by the emperor and the court officials. But she didn't want that. So the Empress Dowager herself is planning to marry her off to, execute whatever her true plans for power are. And I love this page because on page 68, we have Grand Mentor Qi saying, "If the mountain does not come to me, then I will go to the mountain." We still have plenty of time for another quote to take that place, but I've already marked that one down in my cute little book Odyssey thing that I'm creating as a favorite quote for this volume because, if the mountain does not come to me, then I will go to the mountain. In other words, if there is some grand opportunity or some grand purpose that I have to achieve, if it's not just going to be handed to me, then I am going to scale that thing myself and make it happen. Love it so freaking much. And so then we also have it saying here that the Empress Dowager had sacrificed a pawn to save the rook. One of the pawns sacrificed was, of course, Xiguan. She lost her hold of military power from the 8 great battalions. But if Hua Xiangyi marries Xiao Chr-yeh, then that loss will be easily resolved. So before I continue, one of the things that I wanted to mention, just in case anyone's like, what the hell is a rook? So when it says that the Empress Dowager sacrificed a pawn to save a rook, just so you know, number one, a rook is a large black crow. But it is often referred to, so we'll get into that later, the crow piece, because I know on one cover, I think on volume 4, there are crows on it. But anyway, it is often also referred to as the castle-shaped chess piece that moves horizontally, vertically, and basically it's just like there, I think just naturally, to someone who cheats and swindles others, something like that. So that also makes sense, I suppose. So anyway, like I said, after losing Xiguan, she lost her power and everything over the 8 great battalions, gave up that power. But if she marries Xiao Chr-yeh, then there's a possibility that, that problem will be solved. But of course, Shun is like, well, he's never going to say yes to that. Absolutely not. And so then we go forward and Grand Mentor Qi and them are basically discussing those aren't the only options. Xiao Chr-yeh is a very fitting candidate, but so is Lu Guangbai, and so is the Qi clan, because guess what? Qi Zhuyin, a woman, is not the only Qi there. Her father, which has been known, as it was mentioned previously, loves pretty young things, okay? He absolutely loves good-looking women, so he would potentially say yes. Yes. So then we move to the scene, of course, where Lu Guangbai, Xiao Chr-yeh, and Qi Zhuyin all run up to each other. And yes, Hua Xiangyi, sorry. I don't know if I kept saying Liangyi, but it's Xiangyi. She is 2 years younger than Qi Zhuyin. So this stepmother of hers is going to be younger than her, which is just extremely weird. Like, what? So then we move on to chapter 46. And this is opening with Hua Xiangyi and the Empress. So the Empress starts off by saying it's a spring and winter marriage, but Qi Shi is doting. So just in case anyone was wondering, spring and winter marriage, I'm believing that this is referring to the big age gap. Because, when you're in the spring of your life, you're very young, your vitality's high, all of that, blah, blah, blah. You go into the winter, you're getting a little older and stuff like that. But she mentions that Qi Shi is doting. And I want to point this out because a little bit, literally just in the next few pages, I get a little upset about her saying this to her niece. So the Empress, of course, is telling her, don't be sad about it. He's going to dote on you. And in the years to come, you'll have power. And this is how all the Hua women marry. So then she goes to tell her that when she, the empress, was younger, her mother had promised her that the Guangcheng emperor would, give her whatever she wanted, basically, dote on her, essentially. Only when she got to Chengdu, she realized that was not the case, that his doting was fickle. So to me, it was like, okay, I mean, I get it. You still mentioned the power and everything, but this chapter started with you saying, oh, you're young and he's old, but don't worry, he's going to dote on you. Only for you to then turn around and say, yeah, my mom told me my man was going to dote on me, but he didn't. Men are fickle and men are unreliable. I was just like, okay, so you're promising her the same thing, or you're at least posing that. Oop, I dropped my thingy. Sorry, like it's supposed to be some enticing thing. Yet there's a potential for the same thing to happen to her after a certain point in time. And so, of course, we have her little speech on page 72 where she's like, no matter how talented you are, how much you thirst for knowledge, your intelligence, the most important thing you can do essentially is just marry. Meanwhile, the men, they have the ability to gain power because they can take exams, they can rise in their station, they can fight, they can ride horses into battle, they can do all this and that. And I get it. Female oppression really sucks. Female are seen as just with childbearing hips, right? And cooking and stuff, manning the household, right? I get all of that. Whatever. So then she even says, like, all the men in the Hua clan even relied on marrying off the women to just keep their status. They're not great at all. And then we move forward. That we have the court officials feast that has pretty much everyone being cautious because they know that they're all being watched, right? Xiao and his brother are having a meal together, and the 8th grade battalion's account money and their surplus, he says, was given to the imperial army like back pay, essentially. And his brother is basically saying, well, just as Hua Xian had 2 account books, one fake, one real, the Empress Dowager can do the same. So like that money that was missing from like Xiguan, where is that? And this is being pointed out because, of course, Xiao is believing like Qi Shi would no way in the world marry Hua Xiangyi, right? Wrong. His brother is like, no, he might actually do it for money from the Empress Dowager, essentially. And she's probably got way more money than people know about. And of course, the goal is to stop this wedding before the new year, because after that, it'll be too late. It would have been spread too widely, basically, to take it back, essentially. And so the Empress's perfect chance to root this in everyone's hearts is at the court officials' feast. So then I have a note here on page 77, where, of course, it is saying that, because Xiao was like, Qi Juyin would never accept this. And his brother is like, it doesn't matter if she doesn't accept it, she can't object to it. And so Xiao Jiming states that the rift that would cause between the Qi clan and Li Bei would be awful. And Jiming is like, it doesn't matter, because once the Biansha horsemen attack, we all still got to fight side by side. And then if this marriage happens, then the Qi clan, like Qidong, they won't be lacking for money at all, because the Empress Dowager can recoup her losses when she gains the power again and helps cut off the stalemate that's happening. And so Xiao, of course, mentions one way to stop the wedding would be to kill Third Lady Hua Xiangyi, to which his brother is like, bad idea. You would just be giving the 8th grade clans an excuse to end you, okay? And then the other thing is just like, he's just basically saying like, Hai Liang Yi is going to have to fight it verbally. Like, it's going to be a battle of wits, verbal struggle. And the other thing is, if they discover that Hua Liang Yi, Xiangyi, I hate the fact that I keep doing this, I'm sorry, Hua Xiangyi is already a distant blood relative due to some previous Hua ladies being married into that family, then she wouldn't be able to marry him. And so they need to check the Ministry of Rights information for this. So then we move forward and we are introduced to a new character, which at this current moment is not important, but will be important later, I'm sure. Han Cheng. He is part of the Han clan in the 8th Grade Battalions, blah, blah, blah. And he is the new chief commander of the Embroidered Uniform Guard. Also, he wasn't there when all the stuff broke down at the autumn hunt. He was asleep. But Shun Zechuan knows that this is one of Xue Xiuzhou's plants. So I find that something to be very important for us to remember. Now, going forward, it is the Embroidered Uniforms Guard goal, of course, obviously, to protect the emperor during the feast. There is supposed to be absolutely nothing that goes wrong. And of course, Shun Zechuan says nothing will, and I was like, oh, buddy, please don't say that. Anyway, that same day, before the feast, the emperor, of course, goes to do the sacrificial ceremony to the gods, his ancestors, and all that stuff. And he's feeling good about his coronation, realizing that, oh, yes, I got the power. Ooh. So, good for him. Also, we learned that his little side piece, well, not side piece, Pandrugue's original girl that he wanted but was stolen from him by Xiao Fuzi, he got her elevated to imperial concubine. So, good for her. I still don't trust it, but good for her. So, Li Jianheng, during the feast, he's drunk. He's had too much, right? And he says that he wants to make Hai Liangyi the second father, to which Hai Liangyi and the Empress Dowager disagree. And of course, the Empress Dowager is like, if you make him second father, then you're immediately undermining the whole impartiality thing that he has going for him, because this status is not impartial, essentially. And Hai Liangyi lectures him, and he feels a bit embarrassed, but of course he doesn't want to admit that, even though he's been scolded in front of everyone. And so I love this moment because Xiao Chr-yeh steps up and saves the dignity of his friend, the emperor, and also just like lightens the awkwardness of the mood. I really, really liked that. You know, it was just great, in my personal opinion. So then we also move forward a little bit where the Empress Dowager decides to talk to Xiao Chr-yeh, and she's like, ain't it time for you to get married? And he's like, oh, I don't want to get married. I don't have any future career goals either. Like, no, thank you. And the way that the Empress Dowager is talking, she is suggesting that, you know, this Princess Zhao Yue, who is... really quickly, I forgot, who was a part of the Fei clan. Yes, the Fei clan of the 8th Grade Battalions, who also, this girl, this daughter, is very close friends with Hua Xiangyi. So we already see that set up right there. She's suggesting that he marry this lady. And by him doing this, by the Empress Dowager doing this, she is basically putting it out there that Xiao Chr-yeh's marriage is a state affair, again, ruled by the emperor and the other court officials, while Hua Xiangyi's is a private marriage, because she's like, oh, I want them to get married at the same time. So without saying Hua Xiangyi and who she's getting married to, she's still putting it out there that she's getting married. And so... what also happens is the Empress Dowager just, this woman, oh my God, she did it up, okay? Because of course, Xiao Chr-yeh can't outright object this, but he doesn't want to agree to this either. But the Empress Dowager, she doesn't just stop at suggesting that Xiao Chr-yeh marry this lady. She's basically like, okay, if not you, then it could be Lu Guangbai. And if not Lu Guangbai, we can figure something out. Oh my gosh. Wait, hold on. Okay, yes. So, so just really quickly to recap, if Xiao Chr-yeh were to marry this Zhao Yue, then that would be the case where the Empress Dowager would be able to elevate her to imperial princess. And once she did that, that would strip Xiao Chr-yeh of all his power, because the imperial princess's husband was not to have any power, because she is of status equal to like the emperor's sister or daughter. So it makes sense that her husband can't hold that kind of power in Zhou, right? So we see what she is trying to do. Okay, we do. But then, to save anyone from having to answer things and give their thoughts, what happens? An assassination attempt. And who saves the day? Shun Zechuan. One of these eunuchs decides he wants to Qingging the emperor, and he gets Qing-chinged instead. And even at the end of this chapter, it says that Shun Zechuan looked down from above with a meaningful smile, the look in his eyes heavy enough to trample Xiao Chr-yeh's chest. And so immediately once I read that, I was like, okay, so this was set up. Somehow this was set up by Shun Zechuan so that he could save the emperor. Alrighty, okay. So then we move to chapter 47. Which fortunately have the shortest notes for me. Xiao Chr-yeh was in charge of security. Okay, so this is not a good look for him. He and his imperial guard were in charge of this, and with a eunuch getting through and being able to kill or attempt to kill the emperor, not good. So all the eunuchs were detained, the imperial army was detained, and the assistant commander of the imperial army, who was responsible for screening, was also detained. Mind you, they had to go back 3 freaking generations when checking all these people. 3 generations to make sure they didn't have any associations with bad people, to make sure they hadn't done anything. They had to have pristine, crystal clean backgrounds. And so it essentially is really difficult to convince a eunuch to kill the emperor because, like, why would they? But it's also really easy because, like, why would they not? Apparently, if given like the right motives, like it could happen, they could be crystal clean, but it could also just happen in like the blink of an eye if they are offered something great. So at the end of the day, Xiao Chr-yeh's position and everything he's not in danger of this. He just might get scolded a little bit. So we have the Chief Surveillance Bureau who is doing the investigations on this. Also, the assistant commander's name is Meng Zhui, just putting that out there again, which Xiao Chr-yeh thought about for a little bit. He dwelled on that for a moment, so we'll see what comes of that. But anyway, he also thinks about Xiao Chr-yeh. Xiao Chr-yeh thinks about Xiao Chr-yeh. Xiao Chr-yeh thinks about Shun Zechuan and just how he moved way too fast in saving the emperor. Like, we get it. This saber is lightning speed, but he was way too fast. Like he knew it would happen. And so it goes through this thing, which without going through the details again, basically, given how promotions work in the embroidered uniform guard, there is no way that Shun Zechuan would be eligible for military status given his background, even though he's been, absolved of any guilt, right? Unless he got creative. And it seems he has. In saving the emperor. So then we have him about to go to bed, but Xue comes in and he's like, hey, it was supposed to be Han Chung, the new chief commander of the embroidered uniform guard, who was supposed to save the emperor. And Shun Zechuan was just like, he was too slow. Basically, he was too slow. And so Xue is just like, okay, I'm afraid of working with you because you seem like you'll snap or, plot against your own people, basically. And Shun Zechuan is like, did this not benefit you guys? But also, did this not put me in Xiao Chr-yeh's line of sight? Not you guys, but just me. Okay? And then, Xue is like, well, he still saved the emperor's life, so you can't replace him overnight, And Shun Zechuan is like, everything can be done that easy. Like, the first step is the hardest, but it's already been taken. Also, if the emperor really was that grateful to Xiao for saving his life, he would have let him go back to Chengdu, but he didn't. Gratitude will only get you so far, right? So that's where we get with this, and Xue is just like, just please don't forget about us, guys, help us out. And Shun Zechuan is just like, yeah, and please don't forget about what you're supposed to be like during interrogation. You better not fold. So that's all there is to that. Hopefully, if there was anything anyone misunderstood, this cleared up everything for y'all. Whew. It was a lot. So now I am going to end this video. I'm very excited to see where things go. I hope you guys enjoyed these chapters. Please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment sections. If you have any questions, please put those down there as well. Sorry I haven't had many things to teach you guys in Mandarin, but when I saw that one about haste, I was like, oh, that's a good one. So I feel like it's been a minute since I've done it. But anyway, again, haste makes waste. 越速则不达，越速则不达. Okay. Anyway, that's it. You all have a wonderful day and or night, and I will see you all next time. 我爱你们.